Have you ever wondered about the role of identity in maintaining chronic symptoms and conditions? Well, that is what I'm going to discuss today. I'm your host, Madeleine Lowry, a neural retraining specialist, helping people with chronic symptoms and conditions reconnect with their healing potential. Today, we're diving into a topic that's incredibly important, extremely overlooked, and deeply transformative once you understand it. And that is the hidden role of identity in chronic symptoms. If you've been dealing with chronic symptoms for months, years, or even decades, if you've tried treatments, medications, supplements, therapies, diets, protocols, and more, and if you've improved a little but never really fully felt a significant shift that lasted, there's a good chance that subconscious identity patterns are quietly reinforcing the problem without you realizing it. And this is one of the biggest reasons people get stuck, and also one of the biggest breakthroughs people have in neural retraining sessions. So today we're going to talk about what identity patterns are, how they form, how they influence the nervous system, and how changing them opens the door for healing. And I'll share a couple of examples from client sessions so you can really see how powerful this work can be. What do I mean when I say identity patterns? When I talk about identity patterns, I'm referring to deeply held subconscious beliefs about who you are, what's expected of you, how the world responds to you, what you're allowed to have or experience, what you must avoid, and what you must do to stay safe. These patterns develop very early in life, usually before the age of 7, when our brain is in a highly impressionable state. For example, if you have thoughts like, I have to hold everything together, or I'm the responsible one, I have to keep everyone happy, I must stay small, I'm the sick one, I can't rest unless everything is perfect, I'm fragile, or I'm not allowed to fail. Please know that these are not thoughts that we consciously choose. They are subconscious rules about how we are supposed to exist in the world. And here is the key. Your nervous system organizes itself around your identity, and this means that chronic stress responses like chronic tension, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and even chronic sensitivities can all be anchored in subconscious identity patterns that keep the nervous system in a perpetual performance, protection, or perfectionism mode, all of which are inherently stressful. So let's talk about identity and chronic symptoms a little more. What's the link? Let's look at a few examples. Identity pattern number 1, I must be strong. If you have this identity pattern, though you might phrase it differently, you may notice that you override your own needs. You suppress your emotions. You never rest. You feel guilty for slowing down. And you don't ask for help. The result? Your nervous system is in constant tension. This is a recipe for chronic pain, migraines, muscle tightness, or fatigue. I had a client that came to me to talk about how she was at work. And through the course of a session, she uncovered the key beliefs about how she functioned, not only in her work, but her life, in the following way. I am responsible for everything. It all has to be done perfectly, and I can't ask for help. At the end of the session, when she realized the rules she had been living under, rules that she had formed in childhood, She said, "I think I understand what I've been doing wrong all of my life and why I have an autoimmune condition and low thyroid function." Identity pattern number 2. I'm the peacekeeper. This is common in people who grew up in unpredictable emotional environments, had to manage other people's moods, and felt responsible for everyone's comfort. The result? Your nervous system becomes hypervigilant, always scanning for conflict or disappointment, and this can lead to gut issues, anxiety, insomnia, chronic tension, and more. This is an extremely common pattern, especially for sensitive or empathic people. It often leads to emotional repression and suppression and a denial of our own needs, which is the self-abnegation pattern that Dr. Gabor Mate describes in his book, The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. Identity pattern number 3, I'm the good one, and I must not disappoint. This identity pattern often leads to perfectionism, overworking, people-pleasing, and chronic fear of making mistakes. The result? Your nervous system stays in a sympathetic do more, be more mode, and this can lead to chronic exhaustion, autoimmune symptoms, and burnout. This is the classic Sarno syndrome, the goodist and the perfectionist. I had a client this week that realized that she was giving her time, energy, and resources to everyone around her, and felt guilty and shameful if she did not when she was faced with someone who is needy. But she realized she had to stop doing this in order to regain her health. During our session, her subconscious showed her the image of lots of plugs that were plugged into her and were draining her. And she was able to release them and strengthen her conviction that holding on to her own resources was not selfish, it was survival. Identity pattern 4, I'm the weak one. I'm the one who gets sick. This is a tricky one, and no one consciously chooses this, but sometimes chronic symptoms become intertwined with this identity because perhaps illness was the only time you received care, or you were praised for being stoic with regard to symptoms or discomfort. Or maybe illness became a familiar emotional landscape because you grew up with someone in the family who was chronically ill. When this happens, your subconscious may continue the pattern, not because it wants to harm you, but because it believes the identity is keeping you safe, connected, or stable. I had another client who grew up with a sickly mother with multiple sensitivities. I think this kind of example is very suggestive to the subconscious mind and can make us more likely to create the same pattern in ourselves. Let's talk about a client's story to illustrate how identity impacts our physical health. This client came to me with recurring tension migraines and neck pain that had been with her for years. She had tried everything: physical therapy, massage, medications, diet changes, but nothing created lasting change. In our sessions together, the theme that kept surfacing was, I have to hold everything together. And her subconscious mind brought up childhood memories of being the emotional caretaker for everyone, her siblings, her parents, and in her current life, even her partner now. And the pattern was, if I stop holding everything together, something bad will happen. Can you feel the tension in that? Of course her neck and shoulders were locked up. Of course migraines were part of the picture. Her nervous system had been in a decades-long posture of bracing. When we unraveled this identity layer by layer, the tension shifted, the migraines reduced, and she began to set boundaries for the first time in her life. Her body was no longer required to carry an unsustainable role. Let's review a few key concepts about how identity affects our physical health. Identity shapes the nervous system. The nervous system shapes physiology, and physiology shapes symptoms. So when your subconscious mind believes, I'm not safe unless I'm perfect, I must protect people, I must stay small, I can't slow down, there's no room for me to make mistakes, it acts through the body to keep that identity alive. And this could look like tension, fatigue, insomnia, sensitivities, pain, inflammation, heart symptoms, gut symptoms, asthma, or anything else. Remember, your identity drives your behavior, and your behavior drives your physiology, and your physiology drives your chronic symptoms and conditions. And once you understand that, you can also understand that changing your identity or the fundamental beliefs that you operate under can change the way your nervous system works. And that can change everything. So let's talk about how neural retraining can help with this and why these sessions can be so powerful. You can't force a shift in your identity or your belief system through conscious logic. You can't simply think positively and change it. And you can't talk yourself out of it. Or if you can, it will take a very long time. Because identity and the rules of our identity live in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious is automatic, habitual, emotional, protective, and focused on your survival, not your comfort. Your subconscious is also 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind and accounts for 90% of all brain activity. So in my neural retraining sessions, we work with things like the emotional roots, the formative memories, the subconscious associations, and the internal rules that were established a long time ago. We also work with parts, like the protector controller, and like predispositions, if you're familiar with parts work from internal family systems or other kinds of therapies that utilize an understanding of parts. Through neural retraining, we can neutralize old patterns and reinforce new ones, like, it is safe for me to be safe. I am allowed to take up space. I am supported. And it doesn't need to be perfect. Or whatever that repatterning needs to look like for you. When these become the new identity, the nervous system reorganizes and symptoms begin to shift. And this is why, over the course of several sessions, my clients notice less physical tension, more resilience, fewer triggers, and less fear of symptoms. And sometimes there can be dramatic changes after only a few sessions, as we update the internal operating system that has been running your nervous system and your physiology. One thing I often tell clients is, your symptoms might be protecting an identity that no longer serves you. And that can be uncomfortable to hear, but it also is quite liberating when you realize that if the identity can change, the symptoms can change too. You are not broken. You are patterned, and patterns can be rewired. If you are curious about whether identity patterns are contributing to your symptoms, or if this conversation resonated with you, you are welcome to join me for a session. You can learn more about private sessions, group sessions, and free introductory events at tcneuralretraining.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow, rate, and share the podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember, when you change your mind, you change your body's capacity to heal. Content of this podcast, copyright 2025 by Twin Cities Neural Retraining. Music by Barbara Ben.